Which one is better, self-tapes or in-person auditions? Would you rather be in the room or would you rather film in the comfort of your own home? Let's talk about the pros and cons for each. There's no commute. You don't have to deal with traffic or crazy drivers on the road. You don't have to pay for gas or potentially parking or be stressed out about trying to find a parking spot or needing to arrive somewhere on time and actually making sure you're at the right location. You can also choose when to audition. You can have your audition work around your schedule as opposed to the other way around. Of course, you're going to have a deadline as to when you need to submit your audition, but you can film whenever you want within the time frame that's been given to you. So whether that's 24, 48, 72 hours, whatever.
You can also audition from wherever you are, and it's a lot more accessible for actors to audition for projects that film outside of their city or state that they live in, which means more auditioning opportunities in general.
You're able to do multiple takes,
which can be a good or a bad thing.
I think even though you do have the ability to do like 25 takes for a self-tape audition, doesn't mean you should. When you do too many takes, you really suck the life out of the scene. I have done that plenty of times before in the past, and trust me, when it gets to that stage, the process becomes no fun. Also, if you book the job and get on set, you're not going to get the chance to do 30 takes. You might get 2 takes at best. It really depends on the director and the project, but generally speaking, you'll get a very minimal amount of takes, maybe just even 1. I think 3 takes is an ideal number for self-tapes. However, you do have the freedom to do more takes if you want. Let's say you don't like your performance, you want to change some things around. And then also with self-tapes, you can submit 2 takes if you've made some really different choices for each take. There's really no element of stage fright when you're doing self-tape auditions, so it's a lot less pressure, I think. You're not performing in front of a room full of people, you're literally just performing in front of your camera and maybe your reader, and that's it. So it's a lot less pressure. And then if you mess up, you can just do it again. And then of course, when you're doing self-tape auditions, you're not exposed to any
waiting room sabotage from other actors.
Thankfully, I haven't really dealt with this too much, but it is a thing and it does happen. Sometimes actors try to mentally psych out their competition, for instance, by like interrupting whatever pre-audition routine you might be doing or making some backhanded compliments or passive-aggressive remarks right before you get into the room. So that is a thing that you definitely don't experience during self-tape auditions. You do not get any feedback, notes, or redirection when it comes to self-tapes. You film your tape and submit it, and that's that. And that's just because there is no one from the casting team live with you to tweak your performance while you're auditioning. Also, you have to do everything yourself. You're not only the actor, but you're also the director, producer, prop master, lighting person, sound person, editor. You have to find your own reader. So you're wearing a lot of different hats. And then you also have to be somewhat familiar with technology in order to do some basic editing and to be able to digitally submit your audition. The process can feel pretty isolating and impersonal because you're basically just doing everything by yourself at home, alone, and sending this tape off into the void, knowing that 99% of the time you're not going to hear a peep. On top of that, there's no social interaction. Sometimes it's nice being able to see and talk to other actors in person, and I also think it's harder to build meaningful relationships with casting directors, for instance, because you've never actually had a conversation with them in person. They've only just known you through your self-tapes. You can't feed off the energy of a room, which can be a good or a bad thing. Sometimes the energy that you're feeling in the room or the vibes that you're getting from the people in the room with you will help your performance and mindset, but sometimes if, let's say, the casting director is having a bad day or people are just being like mean or negative or passive aggressive towards you, this can mess with your mind and hinder your performance. Also with self-tapes, there is no audience reacting to your performance. Especially with comedy, I think hearing laughter or seeing people really enjoy the choices that you've made can be a really invigorating experience. But of course, on the flip side, you could just get a bunch of blank stares while you're performing and get you in your head about it and everyone's just like on their phone ignoring you, you know? So again, it can be either a good or a bad thing. You're way more likely to get feedback or redirection, but it's not a given. Even with in-person auditions, sometimes you really only get to do one take before they decide to move on to the next actor. However, it's more likely that if they want you to do the scene a different way or take things in a different direction, then they will give you that redirect, and then you can take that note, apply it, and perform your scene again. You also have the chance to ask for any kind of notes and ask for clarification if you're unsure about something to do with your character or any kind of direction that they've given you. One of my favorites is once you're in the room, you only have to worry about being an actor. You don't have to deal with any tech, you don't have to worry about audio or lighting or submitting your audition. You just get to perform. Social interactions. You get to interact with the casting director, or whoever else is watching your audition, and I feel like it's a lot easier to build meaningful relationships with people when you actually get to have a conversation with them in real life. And sometimes the energy of other people and the environment of the casting office can really give you a lot to work with, which is something that you don't really get with self-tape auditions. And for me personally, with in-person auditions, it really forces me to be laser focused and locked in on my performance from the very first take and to put my best foot forward as soon as I enter the room, because I know that this may be my only shot. Whereas with self-tapes, I'm maybe not always like that from the get-go because I know I can do multiple takes and there's no pressure and I can film as much as I want. But sometimes having a bit of pressure can be a good thing and can actually elevate your performance. Commuting, traffic, dealing with crazy drivers on the roads who I swear are trying to kill you half the time, driving around the audition building 10 times trying to find parking, and then trying to understand the parking signs once you've found your spot, paying for gas and parking in some cases, and then you also have to make sure that you show up at your allocated audition time. There's really no flexibility there. You have to rearrange your entire schedule for the day in order to accommodate for an audition that's likely to last like 2 minutes. Stage fright is a very real thing, and there's definitely way more pressure that comes with performing live and in person. You can't just stop recording, stop the audition midway through, or edit anything out. You have a minimal amount of takes and you only have one chance to make a really good first impression. There are way more distractions when it comes to auditioning in person. There are other actors around and just like general stimuli around you. You might be overhearing a conversation. There's people walking in and out of the room. The room might be super hot or too cold. So these are some of the additional factors that you deal with when you're in a casting office auditioning in person. I personally, and this might be an unpopular opinion, prefer to do self-tape auditions generally speaking. Now, I don't mind doing in-person auditions here and there, like on an occasional basis, because sometimes it really is nice to audition in the real world. And I do think that for callbacks, it's always nicer when it's done in person. However, from a practical, logistical, and even monetary perspective, I think self-tapes personally work better for me. Yes, I had to initially invest in my self-tape setup, which can be expensive. I just use my phone to film, but to get good lighting, a nice backdrop, a good mic, that will cost you in the beginning. However, I do think that in the long run, over the course of several years of having the same equipment, I do think it's cheaper to film from home than to have to spend money on gas or parking or maybe even toll roads depending on where you are each time you have to physically get to an audition. Also, when you're out and about, you're more likely to grab a coffee or some food on the way home. And so that's just my own personal feelings about it. I know others out there might disagree, and that's totally okay. That's all that I have for you for today's video. Was there anything that I missed?
I know for a fact that I missed stuff.
As far as like pros and cons for self-tapes and in-person auditions, if there was anything I missed, please feel free to leave a comment down below or add in whatever your thoughts are if you agree or disagree with some of the things that I said. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and until next time, bye!